Professor Melendez. Science and the technology that emerges from it is advancing quicker than humans can keep up with. Although much of it has been around longer than we think, there is still a lot to learn. Many of us have heard of genetically modified organisms, commonly referred to as GMOs, which are plants or animals that have had their genetic makeup altered through genetic engineering methods. Similarly, genetically modified crops, GM crops, are plants that are altered using biotechnology, but excludes the modification of animals. The genetic modified crops can be beneficial. It may be of great interest to both consumers and farmers alike. Agriculture may be engineered to be more resistant in an attempt to make food sustainable. In a world where, with the growing population, it is essential that there is enough food for everyone and those who will live on after us. Many viruses have devastated certain crops. For example, the papaya was almost wiped out by the papaya ring spot virus, which I will refer to as PRSV. But thanks to bio advances, a papaya engineered with the mild strain of PRSV was created. This had a vaccine-like effect. In fact, after the release of genetically engineered papayas to farmers, production rapidly increased from 26 million pounds in 1998 to a peak of 40 million pounds in 2001. Being able to fight off viruses will increase production and ensure that crops will survive to provide for people. In addition, these high-yielding crops also require less land to cultivate. This allows opportunities for other crops to be grown. GM crops can be altered to enrich nutrients for nutrition-deficient populations. Many attempts have been made to bolster the nutritional content of crops, but increased resistance to genetic modification has made it difficult to carry out such projects. Although there is a very prominent example of the success of a GM crop. Golden rice was first developed using the bee carotene gene and a bacterial phytoene desideratus to increase vitamin A. Although one could say through conventional breeding, for example, cross-pollination, many plants can evolve to achieve the same results. But rice does not have enough bee carotene in the rice endosperm for that to happen. Plants do not always germinate from the alleles they contain. This idea derives from the Mendelian genetics. This level of plant breeding could only be achieved through genetic modification. The new variety of golden rice could serve up to 50% of a child's daily requirement for vitamin A. A group has launched from the idea of using crop modification to fortify nutrients within food, especially in developing countries that lack the availability of abundant nutrient-rich food. The website www.harvestplus.org calls it biofortification. Finally, food that is genetically altered could potentially eliminate allergic reactions. Ironically, there is an increased concern over GM food increasing allergies. It is true, some GMOs may cause allergic reactions due to the presence of new and unfamiliar proteins from forageous species alterations. In fact, allergies are caused by sensitivity to certain proteins. So when a person is exposed to them, their antibodies pose those proteins as a threat. A well-known allergy that can be fatal, like many other allergies, is that of peanuts. In 2008, 2008 research published by the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry, the peanut allergens RH and RH6 were silenced within peanuts. These allergens were prevented from being expressed in an organism's gene reading. The study's findings prove that more research needs to happen in order to get closer to a method where certain genes or proteins can be extracted completely to prevent allergic reactions. By being able to control genes in food, it can open up a new world to the taste buds of people with severe allergies. Moreover, genetic science can advance civilization's productivity in a way that everyone can gain from. Farmers may lower their farm's vulnerability to viruses. People with allergies can look forward to being to being able to eat foods that once could have killed them, and malnutrition can come to an end with nutrient-boosted crops. Even though the public's backlash to genetically modified food impedes positive progression and studies for genetically engineered food, the science behind demonstrates possible applications to better everyday life.
Right, Jennifer, there is a proposition at the beginning of the speech, but you don't really indicate that that's the proposition. I picked it out, I was listening for it, and I remembered your outline, but I think you kind of bury it at the beginning of the presentation. I thought you had a nice background, you've got a couple of definitions, and then you give us the proposition like it's just another thing that you're saying without drawing attention to the fact that it is in fact a proposition. It would have been clearer that it was the proposition if it had been followed up by a preview of what the supporting structure was, but there isn't any preview. You dive right into the supporting issues directly, and those are not always phrased as claims. There's often kind of a backing into the subject matter by introducing a concept and explaining what's going on without telling us what inference it is you're ultimately going to be making about that issue. Whether or not we have sufficient amount of crops, for instance, seems like the first point that you're talking about, and then there's a high yield argument, and then there's a nutritional benefit, and then there is fortified nutrition, and then there's allergic reaction. So it sounds like I've got 4 or 5 supporting points. I couldn't tell you what the declarative point on each of those is. I can only tell you what the subject matter is on them, and I think that that's a little problematic. You need to have declarative sentences there. Now, if people are listening carefully and paying close attention, they should generally be able to understand the inferences that you're drawing, but for an oral presentation, you got to be honest. Listeners are lazy. They're bums. We have a tendency to sit back. You got to spoon feed the audience a little bit more and be very direct about those kinds of things. So it's not that you didn't have claims, but they aren't separated, they aren't distinct, they aren't easy for a casual listener to pay attention to, and only somebody who's really making an effort is going to be able to pick out all of the claims. Some of them get lost in the mix, and I think you need to be a little bit more forceful at imposing a structure on your argument. The evidence citations are okay. You've got some examples that you present. I do think you want to give us some sources on, for example, the papaya information, and then there was another one about the golden rice that you talked about. I know that those are well-known examples, but you should give us a source. You gave us a source, for instance, when you were talking about the peanut allergies and silencing them, and I wasn't sure why you weren't giving us sources throughout the presentation. I was a little confused about the allergy issue because at first you seem to be acknowledging that there's an allergy issue with genetically modified foods, and then you kind of go in and talk about how these things could happen. And then ultimately, I think the argument that you're making is that it might be possible to isolate the components in the foods that produce the allergies, and that genetic modification might allow us to, as the phrase is used in the field, silence those particular elements. But that was not very clearly explained. I think that you're describing what research says without telling us what the inference is. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that a potential problem exists, but I didn't get the switch from here's a potential problem that's going on to we've got a solution to this particular problem. That needed to be a lot clearer. Let's see. No, that's it. That's good. Thank you.